All right, if anyone wishes to address the city council on any item considered at this meeting before or during the council's consideration of that item, please enter your name in the electronic kiosk located in the lobby. The city council will allocate up to a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker for each agenda item. Staff reports are available online at the city's website and also in the public view binder located on the podium at the north side of the chambers. Might say in closed session, do we have any reportable action coming out there?
Thank you, Mayor. The council met in closed session on the items listed 3A to 3D. No reportable action this evening.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to call this meeting to order. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, we'll have our invocation by Patrick Blewett from Simpson University. All right, ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And for our invocation, hear these words. We pause to reflect on the immense responsibility entrusted to this council, Lord. We ask that a spirit of unity prevail in this chamber today. May the discussions be respectful, the focus be sharp, and the council decisions promote peace and prosperity in our city. May the work of this council and the employees of this city honor the community they serve. May the primary campaigns and elections coming our way be filled with honesty and integrity. We are thankful for the safety and the joys we saw this last week with the Reading Rodeo Week. And we're also thankful for the events that have happened and will happen in these next months for the America 250 remembrances. Finally, God of heaven, we ask that you bless abundantly everyone who is in attendance at this meeting. Allow us all to listen to each other. And all God's people said, amen.
Okay, we'll start with roll call.
Councilmember Audette.
Here.
Vice Mayor Danuka.
Present.
Councilmember Munns.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Resner.
Present.
And Mayor Lata.
Here. All right, we're going to get going. We have a presentation. It's the mayor's presentation. It's honoring the 250th birthday of the United States of America. The mayor is inviting all the residents and businesses in the community to display the flag of the United States of America from May 22nd to 2026 to July 12th, 2026 as a symbol of our national pride and unity. Today I gave everybody a flag out there. Who got a flag out there? You can raise that and feel really proud. If you didn't, I've got lots of them out here. I wanted to bring those out to have everyone to take home. A little story and background there. In 2020, my family began placing small American flags on about 600 lawns throughout the neighborhood just to restore a sense of pride and unity. And that effort is now an annual tradition in my family. It is our nation's 250th year. And what I'm asking is every Reading resident to join us by taking these flags and displaying them on the lawns between May 22nd and July 12th, 2026. And I'd also ask you to consider organizing or joining your own neighborhoods to do flag walks, to place flags on lawns across the city. And my goal is to show unity and civic pride, to honor our service members and the fallen, and the spotlight. We should spotlight Reading as a community that remembers and celebrates. And so I just hope you display this flag that you take home today. And maybe you'll have meeting conversations with your neighbors in your neighborhood to do something big like we've done in my own neighborhood. Pick 10 homes, 25 homes, 50 homes, do 100, do 600, do as many as you want. When you do this, I say, could you share your plans and all your photos with the city so we can also celebrate, and we can highlight all the neighborhoods within the city as we do this together. Encourage your neighbors, your schools, your veteran groups, all the businesses to participate. And then finally, attend the 4th of July fireworks show at the Civic Center and celebrate as a community. So join me in filling Reading, please. I just ask you to take these flags home and do this and just celebrate. We're going to honor those who served and celebrate our nation's 250th. And we're going to show the pride that makes Reading really, really special. And I hope you just do this with me. Thank you very much. So
Thank you, Mayor.
yeah. Very nice. Thank you. And if you want more flags, We have more. We can send them. I've got about 1,500. We can take it. I'll give you as many flags as you
Can you
want.
send us the Amazon link so we can all save?
Yeah, we can. You'll order 10,000 yourself, and, all right, I love it. Okay, it's time for public comments for non-agendized matters within the city's jurisdiction. Pursuant to the Brown Act and the City Council, we cannot take action on any public comment items. The City Council will allocate up to a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker for 30 minutes total at the beginning of the meeting for public comment for non-agendized matters within the city's jurisdiction. The mayor will determine the order of the speakers, and if 30 minutes is not adequate to accommodate all of the individuals who've submitted their name through the electronic kiosk, the council will trail this item to the end of the open session agenda, and the remaining speakers will address the city council at that time. We have 3 speakers today. We have Christina Prosperi, we have Robert, and we have Leslie. So if you're here, you guys can line up on the wall and we'll get going.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff, and our community, both here and online. I'm usually one of the 28 people on YouTube watching, so you can remember that next time. Like, I'm there for you. So my name is Christina Prosperi. I'm president for the Reading Parks and Trails Foundation. We were formed in 2017 specifically to support the City of Reading Community Services Department. We advocate for our parks, trails, and open spaces. We support program and project development and funding, and we fundraise. So today I wanted to share with the community about our new fundraising effort that will be annually. Traditionally, we had Vine and Dine right here at City Hall, which was amazing and did that for years. And we've transitioned out of that and are coming into a little bit more alignment with getting people into our parks and trails and celebrating that. So with Ironman, we've had a great opportunity to leverage their Your Journey, Your Cause platform. And we are going to focus on our Reading athletes that are going to be participating in that Ironman event. So for August, these are our neighbors, our coworkers, our coaches, our parents, and hopefully some of our youth that are going to be bringing in as well. We would like to start bringing in those younger generations to start doing good and having a good time. The goal is that we are naming this Race for Reading. You can find information on our website. These athletes are going to create personal fundraising pages, tell their stories, share their why. We in turn are going to share about them as well. They are going to be tracking their training on our parks and in our trails, and we get to celebrate that. Honestly, it's an adult jogathon with very expensive equipment, and it's going to be a good time. But the goal is that we can share some community pride, and this can follow every year for the Ironman event. So if you want more information, you can take a look at our website. You can contact me directly or reach out. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. And we would love the partnership for the City of Reading to share this as well. And it can be, even if you're relaying, you can still be a part of it. And we appreciate any support that we can get. And we look forward to continuing to support our Community Services Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. All right, Robert, if you're here, where are you? There you are.
Good evening, City Council. Just wanted to remind everyone, June 2nd is voting day, and regardless of where you stand, be informed, have an informed opinion, and vote for the candidate that most aligns with you. And there's plenty of information out there to kind of objectively look at who it is you're going to support. So regardless of who you support, so just vote. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert. Leslie?
Hello. Okay, so the state capitol has kept me busy and out of your guys' hair the last couple months, but I've been focusing on what our legislators are and are not doing. So Mr. Tarbo, sorry it's taken so long to meet you, but hello, nice to meet you. I realized in writing what I wanted to say about the advanced reading portion that I was going to go off on a tangent that didn't apply to that item. So I'm going to use public comment time for that. I am so glad you are here. I would like to see us start digging through and combing through and auditing a lot of our departments and where money's going. And I heard that that's what you were going to do when you got here. So I have been spending a lot of time out of area, like I said. Last week, Paradise City or Town Council had a meeting where they talked about what they were going to do with their TOT. Their TOT is like 10% of what we get. Yet they are doing huge things with it to bring people in and rebuild the town of Paradise. Huge things. Things that show actual progress, things that have actual returns on investment that are proven. We, however, got over the last 3 years between $7 and $8 million a year. Our Parks and Rec department is a nightmare. We have the Reading Sports Park thing, Motorsports Park out at the airport. I'm sure you've heard all about that. 13 years, one community group has been doing all of their own costs, all of their own building, all of their own maintenance, out of their own pocket, not even out of the cities. So no TOT tax went there. Out at Big League Dreams, now whatever it's called, they have a group that's working their butt off to run that department, week to week, season to season, not having a clue whether or not they're going to be operating. It's really hard to do marketing and sell a product when you don't know if you're going to be in business the next month. And now we've got the Civic Auditorium, which I'll talk to you about later. I got plenty to say on that. But that is ridiculous. And that is just the tip of the iceberg with the overspending, the corruption, the failures, everything that's happening in the city of Reading. So welcome, thank you, and I sure look forward to talking to you. And I mean that, even if it sounded mean.
Okay. All right, the consent calendar. Consent calendar contains items considered routine and/or which have been individually scrutinized by city council members and are anticipated to require no further deliberation. If a member of the public wishes to address an item on the consent calendar, please enter your name in the electronic kiosk located in the lobby before the consent calendar is considered. It shall be the prerogative of any council member before the consent calendar is acted upon to 1, comment on an item, 2, respond to any public comment on an item, 3, request the record reflect an abstention, nay vote on an item, or 4, remove an item and place it on the regular portion of the agenda for delivery of a staff report and/or an extended discussion or deliberation. All right. I don't see any speakers for consent unless I miss anything. No? We
I
can.
have a comment.
Oh, I did. Yep.
So on item 4E, I just had a comment. This is the second reading for the rezone for the Churn Creek Commons subdivision. I had looked through that the last time this was read and the changes that the planning commission requested and that the council asked are not reflected in the resolution. I just wanted to make sure that it was noted though, and that it's still that the standard of how this is going to look is not going to be as it was presented to us, that it is going to be modified to excellence for its look, because it's not reflected in this ordinance. I just didn't know, there was no note that said that that change was made. So I was just, is that necessary to happen? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller?
Yes, Councilmember Audette, if I recall correctly, and I may need Director Pagan to confirm if he's here this evening, but if I recall correctly from the last meeting, what we confirmed was that that would actually fall within the discretion of the Development Services Director or building official, and I believe we confirmed that they could take care of that on their own.
That's enough? Okay. So we are going to harass you privately about that? It is, okay. That's what I needed to know.
Essentially, I asked during that meeting whether or
Yeah.
not there was some sort of objective. When I went to
Yeah, and I
this.
went and looked that up, but I didn't
Standards.
see it reflected in this. I just wanted to make sure that it was noted and that we know that. And then 4.10A, I just want to make sure that the public is aware, because this is a consent item. There are some major fee increases that are being proposed. When we say yes to the consent calendar on June 16th, this is going to come back, and these are going to have major changes, major increases. The question I have is there any developer group that we passed this through that's going to look through and give any type of feedback on this? Because we just did a major fee increase last year. So do you have that information, Jeremy, or is it just going to come back for a public hearing? Sure.
At this point, it's just been done at the staff level, just looking at fees and looking at where we're likely losing more money than not. So we just discussed at staff level. I think last year we did a stakeholder group and involved a few folks.
Yeah.
We could circle back around with them before the hearing or make sure they know about the hearing as it comes up.
Even if they could just be emailed
Yeah.
this, specifically the staff report and the attachments, so that they can, if they want to make comment on it, they've sort of been through the process, they kind of went through a lot of these fees before. I would like to have their impact either in your report, or if they want to come and tell us that. But I also just want to make sure that the public is aware there is a large fee increases, and so if you want to weigh in on those, you may not be aware, but the hearing that we're going to by consent say will be for June 16th.
We'll look at who we invited last year and connect with them.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right, that's all.
Do you want to make a motion while you're at
I'd
it?
like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving along to item 5.1, we're going to consider the council member appointments to the City of Reading Audit and Financial Advisory committees there. I think we're able to jump straight to it. I don't think we have any staff to talk on this item today, but we do have one speaker just popped up. So Robert, if you're here, we're going to let you speak, so. Mention that.
Thanks. Real quick, just a reminder for city council members, when you're choosing people to represent various committees or commissions or whatever, look at qualifications and look at experience and, make sure that the overriding reason that you're appointing them is because they're suitable for the job and they have an experience with whatever it is they're appointed to. Really important because we see the names, and it's sometimes just looks strange. So just a reminder to be diligent and think about the city needs and the county needs first. Thanks.
All right, thank you. If you were paying attention to the agenda when it came out on Thursday, there was a staff report update. On Friday, as there was a revision to the nominations there. So if you picked up an agenda packet today, it should be refreshed and you're seeing that. But if you're relying on your agenda that you printed out on Thursday, this has been updated. So we have two nominations, some back history there. I think we had our meetings with the council back in November or December. We made recommendations to just help with financial oversight, more people that will consider and looking at our auditing and be part of the process there. So government moves very, very fast. So here we are in May, after November and December when we started this process here. And so as far as our audit committee, we resolved as a council that the mayor would appoint one non-voting member, and that would be a 2-year term, and that would go until November 30th of 2028. My nomination for that is Ken Freyer. If I pronounce that right. Ken, if you're here, you'll tell me later. But I had a good conversation with Ken. I think he's going to be a great fit. He has good financial background and auditing experience, and I just had very, very good conversations with him. I think he's just going to be a great fit. And I will say, in looking at all the applications, there was far more interest in the financial oversight, but there was very few people that applied to join the audit. And I think the auditing side is actually the fun one. And it's very, very, very involved. You don't do auditing at home. You don't get homework assignments. So if any of you in the public out there were intimidated to apply to be on the audit committee, there's really no homework. So next round, we hope more people will apply towards that. Vice Mayor Danuka, I don't know if you want to talk about your nominee that you had. So.
I'm nominating Dale Ball, who has been a light.
Can you turn the microphone on?
I'm nominating Dale Ball. Mr. Dale Ball has been a longtime resident of the county. He has been very active in civic life and has been a champion of government accountability and being a fiscal conservative approach. And he has, I've always found him to be very direct. Sometimes people will say too direct, but at the same time has been respectful, but always fighting for the citizens and taxpayers' best use of their money.
And Dale Ball's term, if he's approved today, it will be a one-year
1 year.
term, and that will go till November 30th of 2027. So as far as how the auditing, committee basically expanded, we have one person that will rotate in for 2 years at a time. And then I believe at when the one-year term expires, that will become a 2-year term, if I recall. So, and then, so that way we'll have one person that will join the audit committee every single year by design. So, I don't see any discussion from council. I'll entertain a motion if anybody wants to do that. So,
all of these all at once?
well,
That feels fine. I think we can do it.
I'll make a motion to approve all of it.
Yeah, I'll second.
as a motion, just the audit, or are we also doing the financial?
I would say all of it.
All of them.
Okay. Okay. Did you guys want to talk about your nominations at all for the financial committee or no?
I think the applications are in there. And I think you hit it on the head when you said that each member of council has the opportunity to appoint someone. If you want us to give a background on why we picked them, we totally can, but.
I think maybe the public might be interested to know why some are 3 years and why some are 1. And that is because it's based on sort of how long you're going to be on the council. And we had to start staggering them because we're starting at once, but we want staggered terms. So we did it by those of us that our terms are ending and those that just came on. So that's why, and then it'll stagger each time.
I would make a comment that one of my desire when we proposed this committee was to involve a wide cross-section of our community, which includes different diverse perspective, diverse backgrounds, and I see strength in that because if we have just one narrow particular profession or a particular background, that's very narrow approach. So I do see in this committee people from different perspectives, diverse positions, so I'm very happy with that. So happy to support all of the nominees.
Okay. Did I already hear a motion? Did I miss? I
Yes.
thought you made a
Yep, I
motion.
made the motion.
We will need a second on that
I
motion.
seconded it.
Jack second.
All right, we are moving along. Let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Nice work. All right. Moving along to our regular calendar reports and communications of departments, boards, commissions, and committees. We'll start with the electrical utility, item 9.5B. We're going to consider the Reading Electric Utilities Quarterly Financial Report and Industry Activities Update. Joe, hi.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Joe Bowers, Assistant Electric Utility Director over the Resources Division. Tonight, I have the pleasure of presenting Reading Electric Utilities Quarterly Financial Report and Industry Activities Update. So this is the quarter ending March 31st, 2026, so for the first 9 months of our fiscal year. The financial highlights for the first 9 months is we do have increased revenues. A couple parts of that: retail sales are below budget, wholesale sales exceeded budget due to favorable market conditions and market activity. Power supply costs were within our normal budgetary expectations. The variance reflects routine fluctuations in energy procurement and operating conditions. Sometimes we plan to run our plant, we turn that off, we're able to buy power on the market cheaper. Revenues net of power supply costs were better than planned, which is good news. System operations and maintenance savings, overall expenditures are aligned with budget projections. Favorable variance reflects timing of expenses, deferred activities, and personnel savings. What that boils down to with our cash reserves, which is Council Policy 1414, and how we guide our financial management, is we're at 100 days of cash on hand. That has a minimum of 75, a goal of 150. We do have a max on that of 180. So the highlights for the first 9 months, like I talked about, is revenue optimization. Revenue is 1% over plan. Prudent expense management, we're 6.3% below on system O&M. When we present our financials to council, we present them, I guess, as a business would. So within our operating costs for running the utility, we include both the labor and the expenses associated. So when we talk about the cost of running the power plant, it's going to include materials and supplies to run it, the fuel to run it, but also the people to run it. We do break it out in this report to break it out how you would typically see in our budget book as well. But when we talk about system O&M, that's actually just running the power system. We saved about $4.6 million. About half of that was due to personnel savings. And then again, our reserves are about 100 days of cash on hand. Net operating revenue exceeded budget by 47.5% for the first 9 months of the fiscal year. That's excellent. I do want to share, though, it's the top line, it shows system load was flat, and our total operating revenues were up by about 1%, a little over $1 million. Our operating expenses were down, and so our net operating revenue was up and beat by about $8 million. It's important to note this is operating, so this is the day-to-day activities. Not included in the net operating revenue here is about $18.5 million this year that we'll spend on our debt service. So for the first 9 months, it was about $14 million, and then also our capital outlay. Our capital outlay for the first 9 months was another $14 million or so, and then we had special fund expenditures about 2.5. So our net operating was 25, but after you take out debt, capital, and our special expenditures, our financial results for the first 9 months was negative $5 million. So the positive revenue variance, there's a few things that go into it. We don't just have the retail sales, which is what charging people for using their power here in Reading. Retail sales were under budget by about $2.3 million. Wholesale sales was up by 2.1, so that's the people down in our trading room on Clear Creek Road at the power plant. They optimize our portfolio and try to sell either commodities like natural gas or power, resell the power that we purchased, or actually run our plant and sell it into the market. And then miscellaneous income beat by about $1.4 million. That's about double what our budget was. This is primarily too, and it'll wane over time. We issued bonds last year, about $70 million. Those are placed in a trust account, and as we spend those down, we do pull them out, but while they're sitting in that trust account, we do earn interest on them. So we did have a beat in interest income for the first 9 months, but as we spend that down over the next year or so, that'll go away. Power costs, as I mentioned, power costs is below budget, about $2.25 million. Year over year, it also decreased by about that same amount. System O&M, which I had mentioned before, this isn't just what you would think of like O&M in a typical government setting. This would include everything it takes to run the utility. It was down by about $4.6 million. On the capital side, we're about 55% spent through the first 9 months. This is our budget for the year for capital was $25 million. That includes a little over $5 million of carryover from the prior year. And because many capital projects span multiple fiscal years, we don't actually expect to spend 100% of that $25 million this fiscal year. Some will carry forward, but from our own financial planning and our own tracking, we're right on target. And just as a reminder, all of the capital, at least for the next year or so, will be funded, maybe a year and a half will be funded with those bond proceeds. And then just to point out here, special funds, if you look on our financial statements online, you'll see that we've only spent about a quarter of it. At a couple of council meetings ago, council approved a new energy procurement program, which would actually allow us to use our cap and trade proceeds to meet compliance requirements at the state and purchase renewable energy credits. So what we'll do is we phased out actual programs, like electrification, charging, stuff like that, and we're gonna basically, in effect, use it to pay the power bill. So that'll jump up. Here's a chart that kind of shows, I talked about how we present it as a business and how you might present it in a more government setting. This is the more government setting one. You see that we actually break it apart. You have your personnel, material supplies and services, capital outlay, and debt service. So this is the first 9 months, just totally high level. You would expect to spend about 75% of each category for the first 9 months. That's 3/4 of the year. Anything below that, you're under. Any over 75%, you may be ahead of it. So all of our debt, I'll start from the right, that's the simplest one. All of our debt on the right, 75.3%. All of our debt's fixed rate. So of course it would be right on plan. Capital outlay, as I talked about, 55%. Some of that'll carry over to next year. Material supplies and services at 72%, so just under our plan of 75% for the first 9 months. And then division, our personnel is at 68.2%. Notably that, our updated budget for FY '26 of $46 million does include the 9 positions that we removed. Believe that was back in March. Just another way of presenting it, time elapsed, 75%, March 31st. You'll see personnel is under, material supplies and services are under, capital outlays under, and debt service with fixed rate debt is right on plan. Here's a little, I guess, a meter, what you talk about. So we talked about our income statement. This is from a balance sheet perspective, considering it drives our financial planning. We care about cash. Here, you'll see that our max is 180, our min is 75. This is not a perfectly designed, meter here, because 150 would probably be off to the right a little bit. But you'll see that we are about 100 days. We started the year with about $45 million of unrestricted cash, and we're down to about 40 million because we went through about 5 million in the first 9 months of the year. Switching out of the financials and talking about the industry landscape, wildfire is still the #1 issue for electric utilities in California. Well, wildfire and affordability. But as far as major efforts to change or legislative efforts outside of the regulatory landscape, major legislative efforts around wildfire and grid reliability. There's huge news, and I'll just, with CARB, so Advanced Clean Fleets got pushed out, but the one thing that's not, I guess, on here that we're really, really watching is cap and trade. Each utility in California, well, not just utilities, but other sectors are allocated carbon allowances. It's one of California's schemes to get people to get carbon levels back to 1990 levels. We are allocated allowances based on our current allowances and the current calculations through 2030. We have a certain amount. CARB released language, it's what's called 45-day language, which, if that had passed, would have reduced the number of allowances that we are allocated, which, based on current pricing, which, as we know, with supply and demand can change. So if supply went down and they reduced everyone's allowances and everyone had to buy them, prices could go up. But reducing the number of allowances we have based on current prices, which are probably not reliable, that would have increased our costs through 2030 by several million, at least $3 million. The 15-day language actually came out to benefit us. They revised it up and to us get more allowances. That being said, not every utility is a winner. There's winners and losers in this as you start to cap it and then you start to decline over time. Not everybody's a winner. So there's still a lot of flux there. And so we'll find that out later this month, what they actually go with. And then what's neat over here on the federal permitting constraint, just because it's topical to us, we do own the generator at Whiskeytown, at the base of Whiskeytown Dam. And EPA is making more streamlined relicensing. It used to take you almost a decade to relicense a hydro facility on the waterways. And they're trying to make that much more streamlined. As you guys may remember, Council approved a capital project last year for the Whiskeytown relicensing, as that's coming due soon. So just a summary here, positive net operating revenue. We're controlling what we can control. The reserves are within council policy. Capital projects are on track. O&M is below budget. And then from a policy standpoint, we're actively engaged in federal and state advocacy to protect customer interests. And so with that, the recommendation would be accept our quarterly report and our industry activities update, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Joe.
Can I?
Council, any questions or Councilmember Resner?
I think that you said this very quickly, which I'm very impressed that you gave financials that quick. But did you mention that we're currently funding maintenance with bond revenue? Did I understand that correctly?
Correct. Now, let me clarify. When I say maintenance, if we go out there and we replace a pole, what we'll call that is general system improvements. From your standpoint, if you see a broken pole and we replace that pole, we are paying for that with bond proceeds. If there's an outage and somebody goes out there and they inspect it, maybe replace a fuse, things like that, then no. If we're doing tree trimming, things like that, like general maintenance that has no useful life, we are not expending bond proceeds because you wouldn't capitalize those. But anything that you would capitalize with a useful asset or useful life, we are using bond proceeds. We don't typically do that, but we are right now. We are bond funding our what we call general system improvements what other utilities are and what we call revenue-funded capital projects. They're just ongoing replacement of poles, wires, stuff like that, to keep your system as is. We are bond funding those.
Is that just our current plan because of this situation, or is that a
That
long-term norm?
Yeah, so that was part of our, I guess you would call it our strategic plan with our financial strategic plan was to issue bonds and pay for capital for a period of time as we could moderate any increases to rates.
What is the, I know that our goal is to have 150 of cash on hand. And we're somewhere between 100, 106 or so. Do you have a number of a comparable city to ourselves of how much cash on hand? Somebody else who also has like a utility within the WUI, that sort of thing? Somebody who's comparable to us of how many they would usually have on hand?
Yeah, we look at that, and we also get, as part of like the rating process, we get a tool from Fitch Ratings that will share what other cities are at, and you can drop down and look and pick size of your city, what your rating is, and all of that. We're generally lower. Going back all the way to the COVID era, what we put in place and what we still have, and we've talked about last fall, was we have a line of credit for $25 million, which for lack of a better term is synthetic reserves that we have available in case of, but that we pay for that to access $25 million in case of emergency. We use that and we pay, top of my head, about $80,000 per year for access to that, but that's a lot less than if we extracted $25 million out of the public,
Yes,
kept it in
I
our
know
bank account, and then they would have to go pay the cost of money in the private sector. So we think it's like a community thing that probably makes more sense.
Makes sense. I just want to keep an eye on our cash on hand for all the obvious reasons. That's it.
Vice Mayor Denuka.
So what happened to the plan for proposing the rate increase? Are you still planning that? Is that in the wing somewhere or in the future?
So that's a great question. So we're going through the citywide efficiency study. And so what we've done is we've put that rate increase proposal on pause. The council and city manager decided that. So we're going through the citywide efficiency review. At the same time, we're going through and we're updating all of our power supply forwards. So you have forwards for gas, electricity, all that stuff that we would have to purchase. We're updating our own production cost models and our 5-year plan. And so as we get through the efficiency and anything that we learn from that, we would incorporate that, and then we would present to council later this year an updated financial plan for their decision-making.
Thank you.
Thank you for making financial information really easy to understand. Thanks, Joe.
All right, we need a motion to accept the city's report here, so.
I'll make a motion that we accept the city of Reading.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
And Mr. Mayor, I apologize. Did we take public comment?
Well, I don't think I saw any public comment. I'm sorry.
Okay. Apologies.
Would you like to speak? I mean,
I just did. Thank you. Apologies.
okay. All right. Without further ado, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. That passes. All right, moving on to community services. Consider any transition funding for advanced writing and also any terms for the RFP, the request for a proposal for the Civic Auditorium lease located at 700 Auditorium Drive. Travis, you're up.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. I'm Travis Minnie, Director of Community Services and Airports, and we have a presentation tonight to discuss an RFP for operations of the Civic Auditorium. So a little bit of background here. February 3rd, council directed staff to develop and issue a request for proposal for the lease of the Civic Auditorium. They also authorized $116,000 per month in funding for 4 months, which expires June 30th, coming up next month. Council had an ad hoc committee that staff met with Advanced Reading board members. First meeting was May 1st. We asked for a revised business plan to go over what may be a potential way to move forward with our existing operator, and ultimately in that meeting, additional revisions were requested by ad hoc and staff. So we had another follow-up meeting May 11th. After that meeting, we were not able to find any sustainable model that did not require significant investment by the city. And without being able to identify a way forward, we have now come to the point in time where Advanced Reading is most likely winding down without additional input by the city. So after months of business plan permutations, cost-cutting endeavors, Advanced Reading's board did not find a low-risk, sustainable model that does not rely on continued funding or fits within our current financial situation. So the wind-down timeline would be dependent on transition planning and funding, if any, and we are happy to have that conversation at the tail end of this, and it is optional. But what we do need to do is figure out how we would move forward with our RFP. What would be the terms that we propose to any potential operator? And so some of these are important because they have big financial implications. So what I would like to do is go through all of those decision points and get consensus from council on every single one so that we can effectively write our RFP and have a clear package that we offer to any potential operator. So we have to make those decisions because, again, they do have financial and use implications for the building. So we're going to go through and I'm going to tell you what we do now with the existing operator and any changes staff recommends, and then we have some decision points that require just input from council.
So if you're going to get our consensus, would it be appropriate to get public comment now before we go to that, or do you want to go through that?
I would leave that up to City Manager Tarbo on procedure or the mayor.
I think that's up to the council, how you would like to handle that item, whether you want to take public comment now or later.
I just thought we might, if we're making decisions right here as far as if he's getting the yes or no's or affirms on that. I think he's going to be asking us what we want to do.
If we went through them all and we're in agreement or we negotiated, then at the very end, the public can comment on those things.
Okay.
Then we can
Fair enough. Just wanted to ask the council, so, okay.
It won't be a vote right away. It will just be discussion, and then we can do a vote.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so our first topic of the evening is subletting. So not all of these are exciting, but again, they do have implications for any potential operator. So currently, the operator is allowed to sublet temporarily. We do not recommend any changes for that. However, you could sublet a small commercial space or have any kind of sublease, but we do not recommend that that be changed in the RFP or future lease agreement. And so I would ask for some feedback on that or some consensus that you, or we can go at the tail end and just run through. Okay, so we'll just burn through these and come back and then you'll kind of give me does that work?
How about we'll speak up if we have something?
I like that. Events. So currently the agreement is written to have 60 event days. We're doing a little wordsmithing and we recommend the use of, or 120 use days. Use days is a better terminology, more consistent with the industry, and it essentially means if you're going to have a conference or a concert, you have load-in days, load-out days, which is kind of your setup and your teardown. And so that means that there needs to be some activity about 1/3 of the year. Utilities. Utilities are currently shared between the operator and the city, but there's a very distinct line. It's essentially indoor-outdoor. So the lawn, the grounds, that electric and water is the city's responsibility. And the interior, so the power, water, sewer, and solid waste, that is the operator's responsibility. We do not recommend any changes with that. Maintenance, similar lines are drawn. We have interior maintenance, which is performed by the lessee. It's generally the lower level, tenant level maintenance. All major stuff is performed by the city. We do the exterior of the building as a city, major mechanical, so that's your HVAC, elevator, windows, landscaping, parking lots, roads, major plumbing, things like that. We do not recommend any changes for that because that's a very typical tenant and landlord arrangement. Monthly rent. Currently, the agreement has a $5,000 per month rent. However, there's a rent holiday, which is in effect through June 30th. We recommend that you do not charge rent for the next proposer because we do believe that it is a very common model and that we may run into this with future proposers that they actually request operations and maintenance funding. So we want to leave that open, and it's a little awkward to pay on one side and collect on the other. A message popped up here, sorry. That was interesting. Parking lot use, so no charge currently to the city's fire department for training, understandable, it is our parking lot. But what we would like to add, our recommendation, is the ability to charge for parking. We do believe there is some revenue that can be captured should the operator choose to not be compelled to charge for parking. So we'd like to provide that in the lease, it's not currently delineated. Natural disasters. So the operator should understand that currently the city may occupy the building during an emergency or a natural disaster. So think car fire, major flood, things like that. We can use it to shelter. We do not recommend any changes, but again, we do want to make sure that they are aware of that. Could have show implications or event rental implications. So they would have to write that into their contracts. City free use days, we don't use a lot of these, but it is in the agreement. But the city is permitted to use the premises for municipal purposes without obligation to pay rent. But it cannot interfere with the lessee's use. So what that means in practice is that we're allowed to use the building, but if we're taking up a show day, they can still market that day, so we have to pay anyway if we really want to be firm and hold our date. So we would typically reimburse for utilities and staff time and then hold that date. We do have cost in that day, but we don't exercise that too often. Most recent one I can think of is City Fair, which is a new addition to our event schedule, but we do rent the facility during that time. We do not recommend a change for that because we do not want to jump in and kind of mess up the schedule. So we'd like to be able to use days if they're available and pay our way if we need to. O&M budget. So there's no current O&M budget for an operator of the facility. So this has been the request that we've heard several times from our current operator that they would like us to set a budget for them to use to operate the facility. However, we recommend in the RFP that we allow the proposer to make a request for a compensation or O&M dollar amount. That way we're not dictating the terms and we're essentially seeing what the services cost, if anything, from any potential operator. So that would go into the scoring of the overall RFP criteria. Special events, this one will require some discussion. There are several special events that are baked into the agreement. These are priority scheduled days, so these come before any other event. If Led Zeppelin gets back together, it will not interfere with Cool April Nights. That is essentially how the agreement is set up. So we have all of these events listed here, and we will have to essentially choose which ones we want to bake into the agreement. It does not mean that any of these events go away. It means that their priority of scheduling can be lowered and that we will have a different relationship with those events with any future operator. So right now we have Cool April Nights, Reading Rodeo, 3-on-3 basketball tournament, Turtle Bay Auction Dinner, California Deer Dinner, Memorial Day Ceremony, State of the City, July 4th Freedom Festival, and one other 2-day weekend requested by Reading Rodeo Association, provided it's 6 months in advance and the weekend isn't booked. So what we would propose for that is to limit these future obligated events to ensure a more competitive proposal, because this is a lot of days to tie up. We would also recommend that the Reading Rodeo days be defined as a set period of time rather than the time in which the rodeo occurs. It doesn't mean that we have to dictate dates. It means we have to dictate a schedule. And so I'm happy to, we made a suggestion here, but I'm actually, I've reached out to the rodeo and haven't heard back yet, but I would like to solidify those with the best dates that work for them so that we're kind of fair across the board. Currently, I believe the Civic is dark for about 2 weeks from programming, but we think that that might be a little bit overkill. So we want to make sure that we work with them to get the exact days they need, nothing more, so that the potential future operator can have the most flexibility to have the best commercial success. Maintenance is actually just in here twice, so we don't have to have that conversation again. It's amazing how many times we looked at the staff report or the PowerPoint and no one noticed. So I'll own that mistake myself since I made the PowerPoint. Some other pertinent RFP details. There are a lot of city-owned assets in this facility. We are going to, our current operator does conduct an analysis and an inventory of the assets with their condition noted and everything like that. We're going to refresh that before the RFP goes out so that the potential future operators know exactly what is included with the building. And another important point is that the RFP requires or will require a statement of finances to ensure the potential operator can fund their business without relying on the city as a risk partner or providing an upfront operations budget. This means that should they request an O&M budget, we are not bankrolling events ahead of time, that they are actually able to operate the business on their own and take payment in a monthly schedule or whatever we end up contracting with them to do, so that we are not the risk partner upfront for a startup. So we want to make sure that we have an operator that can come in and take care of business and pay the bills from day one. So we think that is it's a bar to clear to make sure that we have serious business partners that want to engage in this operation. So next steps from here would be to conduct that full inventory and then issue the RFP. And we have a draft timeline, which I will admit is aggressive, but we would like to get started right away. And we do have at least a month or two on the tail end that we know can get stretched out a little bit because contract negotiations can always take a while. And depending on who you contract with, they could have a whole team of attorneys. And so we wanted to provide a little extra time there, but this is in general what we think that timeline would look like. And so with that, I'm able to take any questions for now, or we can jump back into public comment.
Okay, how about we take public comment and then we'll go back to questions, if that's okay. So we have Todd Jones, Leslie, and Michael Quinn, 3 speakers.
I know this is not how it works, but I was kind of hoping you guys would ask more questions first, and then I could kind of read the room a little bit.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Good evening, council and staff and public. My name is Todd Jones. I'm the CEO of the Reading Chamber of Commerce. We also run Visit Reading. I have so many thoughts. I did write them down. I'm going to try to do my best to kind of stay on point here. You are all faced with a very tough decision tonight. The Civic is a great asset to our community. I wrote in a newsletter on Monday. This is something we've seen coming for about 16 years. Advanced Reading basically bailed out the city. 16 years ago, we were in a very similar situation. They did a great job of doing it. And now we're back here where we're at, where we're faced with a really uncertain future. Let me get back to my notes so I don't really go off the rails here. So I think looking through this RFP process, there's a couple issues that I see. The building is really a tricky building. Advanced Reading knows the industry, they know the building. The building isn't exactly, I think, what we would like to see in a modern day. I mean, they've done the best they can, but it doesn't really fit conventions and a lot of things the industry needs right now, or our community. The other big thing that I think I keep hearing, but I don't really hear in the public that much, is I'm not sure what sane operator is going to come in here and say, hey, we're going to take on this building when the city, as a landlord, to my knowledge, cannot fulfill their obligations to even fix the HVAC, which is estimated to be about $5 million. So who's going to come in here and say, yeah, let me take this on? If Advanced Reading can't do it, I really don't see somebody else coming in with all the information that they have, the way that these are modeled all throughout the country. I know Julie's talked about this up here and many other places where these are subsidized to provide the economic impact, which I believe the Civic does provide to our community. But I think with current budget situations, I don't think anyone's going to respond to the RFP. And unfortunately, I really feel like as much as I love the Advanced Reading team, I just don't think we can do it right now. I think that we are going through this efficiency study. There's a lot of things that are really pertinent in front of us right now. And as much as I would hate to say it, I just don't think in 4 months we are not going to be in a better situation. I don't believe anyone's going to come forward. Certainly if Advanced Reading can't figure it out, I don't think anybody else will either. And it's hard to say. I think we need to really come up with a long-term plan. I think there's one out there. I don't think the Civic should be demolished. I think there is a future for the Civic. I think there's a future for the riverfront. I think there's a future for more cohesive tourism development in our community, but I don't think it's going to come together in 4 months. Hopefully it will in a year or 18 months or 2 years, but I don't think it's going to happen right now. And I think this is really one of the first of many hard decisions we're going to have to make, because we've been kicking the can down the road as a city for decades, and at some point we're really going to have to make a tough decision and think through some long-term strategies. So it's hard to say, because I love the Civic and the team that's done such a great job for years, but I think that's what we need to do. So thank you.
Perfect timing, Todd. Leslie, you're up. So it's all good.
sorry, I'm short. Okay, so since Advanced Reading's saying they can't do it, there's really not a need to go into a lot of negativity. I will say that I've heard statements online by different individuals across the board. Well, we didn't want to make things political, or we didn't want to make things, a polarizing issue. There are two situations where that was done by Advanced Reading, and that's the only negativity I'm going to get into. And that's one, pushing the sales tax initiative. If you don't want to make things polarizing or political, don't back something that large and then expect the city and the constituents to be happy with giving you free money. And two, there was an individual who I was friends with who is not part of any of our political class, groups, initiatives, anything. She is just a mom trying to do her thing. And she tried booking the Civic for a large scale event. Unfortunately, due to the political climate and culture and chaos after Charlie Kirk, it was canceled due to some security issues, death threats, that type of thing, which is unfortunate in the world that we live in. But she has nothing to do with local politics. When she went in for her meeting to set everything up, whoever it was she was meeting with, I know, and if you want to know, we'll have that conversation. Based on two of the speakers, namely Chris Street and Kevin Cry, she was treated so terribly and with this just abstention that was ridiculous. And she called me and she's like, I don't understand what I did wrong going into this meeting. I presented what it was we were doing. I showed her who our lineup was. I showed her what we were doing. And all of a sudden she was just so mean. But in my previous meeting, she was so nice. And I said, well, it's because you showed her your lineup and these two people were on it. When she went in for the next meeting and she explained that those people, she's not tied to any of this, anything, they backpedaled. Oh, we're so sorry. We love Charlie Kirk. We love what you're doing. This is great. Even started crying about how the tax initiative, if it doesn't pass, they're all going to be shut down. And it was just the most unprofessional experience for somebody outside of our area to experience. That might be part of our failure, right? So just that experience, along with backing such a polarizing tax measure, might be part of our problem. I'm glad it's going to RFP. I don't think it needs to be demolished. I think there's great established community events, and for years, this has been something that's functioned well. So I hope we can figure it out. And again, let's start deep diving some of this chaos and misspending, because we might have a solution that might not cost the city as much money, because guess what? Bottom line is, there's no money, and continued bailouts is an absolute no.
All right, Michael, you here?
I'm going to change a little bit from what I originally wanted to say because of some of the things that have been brought up now that I didn't know. I went through the financials to see what was wrong, and I found a number that just stuck out. The number, we're looking at a loss in fiscal year ending 23 of $25,000. Next year, it was $425,000 loss. The next year is $1.3 million loss. Well, you can't, there's something wrong there. So I started combing through the last number, and I found the exact number. And it comes under the program services, which is basically the amount you're going to get in for concerts, things like that, versus their cost. And in the year ending 24, they made $4.6 million in income, $3.5 million expense. The next year, $100,000 more in income, but $880,000 more expense. Literally, that is the number that you're going across from 425 to the 1,300. It follows through. It's the amount of costs that you have in putting concerts and things like that on. So where do you go on something like this? You've got to make things profitable. When you put an RFP out there, someone's going to have to know that they're going to change what's going on, how much they're paying, because that's your cost. It's going to be very, very evident that what goes on. The city used to run it. The city used to run that. They had 3 people, John Gorman, Peggy Hughes, and Patty. And that was it. But you could bring in your own show. I did. I brought in my own concert. Didn't make a lot of money on it. I probably lost a little bit. But it was up to me to have that cost. They didn't have to do it. They gave me a rent for it. They said, we're going to do your tickets, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, security, all that stuff was provided at this cost. So the city knew that they could make money on it. I took the risk. And those things went away. We had the Chicago series of plays that was here, Cats, and all the major plays would come to town here, but they took the risk. The city didn't. And that's the one way that you handle this, is you know, whoever's going to do the RFP has to be given the opportunity to let everybody else come in. That's going to be their decision. But this is something that, you know, it's just very evident when you read these numbers where the cost was and why it got to where it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, Travis, you going to come back up? And Counselor Resner, you got questions or comments?
Is my name still out there?
Oh, it still is there, but
Do you need us to go through your slide that is RFP decision points, special events? And if so,
Yes.
what do you need direction-wise from us in terms of which ones we're saying you need to specifically keep available?
Yes, we would like to know which events we would like to bake into the agreement. None of these events have to go away. I am not saying that at all. It is which ones have a set date, a clause in the actual contract that says you will have the Freedom Festival at this venue. Because those are restrictions on the use of the building that it's like if you have a vacation or you have a rental house and you let someone rent it and you say, well, but I'll be there Christmas and spring break and all summer, so you got to get out. So we have to make sure they're aware of these things. And so I would like some direction on which ones we would like to bake in. For example, Cool April Nights, Rodeo, 4th of July are very common events that we have kind of baked into the culture of Reading, and those are ones that stick out in my mind. The others are optional.
I would say 3-on-3 also feels, maybe it's just because I grew up here, also feels cultural to Reading, and then Memorial Day, and both of those are only outside.
I didn't see Iron Man on the list. Is there a reason we should do that since we have a contract for 3 years?
It's not in the existing lease. We can certainly add it. We have a 3-year commitment. Those events typically run longer, but you could add it.
Question.
Great input.
The question I have about this is, do these groups pay any rent to the Civic?
Yes, they all pay amounts. We do not, for the Freedom Festival, we pay for our services, but they all have deals worked out with the operator specifically on what costs the event is able to actually pay.
Okay.
And, you know, Advanced Rating is actually very good at understanding what the overall impact to the community is and kind of seeks the positive message in some of these events too. So they're very fair with those costs.
July 4th doesn't get charged. Anything else, they can charge the vendor, right?
Yeah, you could say in the agreement, our uses will not, you know, like 4th of July does not have a charge to it.
Okay.
We pay for their staff time.
Right.
And specifically fencing, and any kind of work that we need for them to put that event on.
Be my preference to add Iron Man. I don't know if you need consensus on that, but since we're in the contract for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Was that enough consensus for,
Do you want to remove any? That's what he's asking.
well, the ones that we discussed, Cool April Nights, Reading Rodeo, 3-on-3 basketball, Memorial Day ceremony, and 4th of July, and Iron Man. And then the only one that we were requiring, per what your comments were, are that 4th of July Freedom Festival would be no charge to the city, but we would reimburse for their
Sure. I accept that.
cost that.
And the other events are welcome to book as they make sense to the operator and schedule days and figure all of that
Yeah,
stuff
I don't
out.
think we should get
Those
in
are
the
mostly
weeds on that.
flexible calendar dates.
Whenever Todd thinks he can run the state of the city.
What was that?
He was just being
Nothing.
funny. He was being
So-
funny.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with that.
Okay. And then the rest, you know, staff recommendation, if we need to burn back through those, that is fine. If not, if staff recommendation is adequate, we have the direction we need to move forward with the RFP.
Can you just go slide by slide, just in case anyone has a comment, just quickly, so, yeah, go ahead. Anything in this, no change, guys, right?
No, it was in it was in staff report.
Yeah. Anything else? Just go down the list. Next. Okay.
The only thing that I'm curious about, and it's putting the cart way before the horse, but I'm not interested in like a profit sharing, but I would be interested in any, if it was very, again, cart before horse, but if there was some success, that there would be some type of capital fund if they, if they wanted to put part of that proceeds, that they can then, if they needed outdoor fencing, or if they wanted to do some type of improvements that is good for their business, obviously then it's good for us, but something that requires them to, if it gets to a certain level, that they start reinvesting back in to the building, the facilities in general.
Actually, I like this idea a lot because then you can, that could be one of the points to score a bid based on, are they willing to invest in the building?
Like, what things are you talking about? Don't they already invest in the building by maintaining?
No, but she's asking is,
Well, I'm just asking for
Okay,
clarification.
so yes, actually, Advanced Writing has put a lot, millions into the sound system and that type of stuff. But like, I'm thinking about like the sports park where we have all the turf issues. But if, instead of profit sharing, if we had maybe had a separate account and they were putting those profits into like a capital improvement, then it's sort of anything that does well there goes back to actually funding, making that. And I want to create some kind of a structure or anticipation that if it is successful, I mean, maybe this isn't necessary, but if so, I'd like to, if there's any profit to be made, which again, but it should go back into the building and sort of back into it.
So
and I
once they hit a certain level of profit, then above that should go.
Yeah, so it would be like I'm not trying to profit share with a group, but I do think that we should create some kind of a structure where there is an incentive to do well, because it can help you have an account that actually goes into fixing, not like an HVAC or a roof, but maybe some other types of improvements, maybe better facilities for selling beer. I don't know.
I was going to ask what specifics you were thinking, like, were you thinking HVAC or roof? I
I'm
mean,
actually
is
thinking
that-
like the fencing, or like things that are not glamorous but are really super effective and helpful to just doing business, or like, you know, something for an outdoor beer garden or things like that, you know, they would be reinvesting, but it also enhances.
I do think we might struggle, as we've heard of the comments, just to see if anybody does apply for the RFP. And if we overcomplicate the matter, we might be deterring more and more people that might have been like, oh, I might have been in, but now you're telling me to take part of my profits and invest it back in the building. But when I think about the landlord-tenant relationship, if I'm renting a house, I would be very disappointed if I was required to pay extra money to go towards an air conditioner for a home that I don't own.
Well,
you know,
not the
so-
air conditioning, we're
I
gonna do
think,
maintenance.
I think
doing
that's why she
maintenance.
said cart before the horse. I think
Okay.
that she's meaning that I'm speaking for you, I'm sorry.
No, I get it. I'm
We
just
can
thinking about-
certainly
You know what I'm-
negotiate, like if you did a 5-year initial term, you could have a negotiation at the end of 5 years for a renewal period.
Yeah, and
If
at
they're
that
killing
point-
it, you can require additional investment. A capital improvement plan may be required at the 5th year to unlock future years.
Yeah, I
Or
mean-
10 years plus the next 5-year increment or whatever.
What is the term of this? Is it gonna be 5 years?
We don't have that ironed out, but I would probably go with the 10 years, so they actually have room to go with their whole business, but you could do 5 plus renewals. You definitely want some good chunk of time to start with.
we did ask Rodeo to make put that in the lease plan, right? To put some capital improvements over time.
In lieu of rent?
In lieu of rent.
Yeah.
And those are mainly on like a 10-year timeline.
Yeah. So something similar, that's what you're saying. Something similar.
Yeah,
Okay, so we
What do you
will
need
come
from
up with
us?
something
that maybe after 5 years would
that,
probably.
yeah, after 5 years, a
trigger.
capital improvement plan may be required for future negotiation. We'll work out some language. It requires some input or the option to negotiate for that, because they may be doing okay but not great after 5 years. So we'll have to do a progress check at that point. We'll work with the attorney. So are there any other questions? No. Okay, we've burned through all these. So that is that. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
I did miss one speaker out there. I guess he didn't get his card. Jay, I'll go ahead and call you up, so. You promised to be nice, that's why I'm calling you up, so, yep.
City Council, here in funny terms. So Jay Dunlap, Face of Real Reading, the most anti-Measure A tax and spend person that's ever visited the council. I, again, wholeheartedly am proud of all the time we spent against Measure A. I thought it was a travesty. And I think as a result of everybody facing the financial crisis we're in, finally, after a long time, we end up with a new city manager who I think was hired to do corrections and remove overstaffing and raises. So just to let you know, I'm still the same guy. I would ask you guys to kind of pause and think about reality. And one of these is, what is the likelihood that you're going to get a vendor in the time frame? I've worked in public companies most of my life, and when I led an RFP, I have a short list, and I vet that short list, and I say who's going to be likely to apply. And if I'm going to be changing a vendor that's in a mission-critical situation, if I don't feel I have a very high propensity of winning, I don't put an RFP out. It's embarrassing to put an RFP out that has no bids. I've said before, and I still believe in some ways, I would love to run the Civic, and I think it would be profitable in different situations. But I don't think I would apply for an RFP in this time frame. And so what it seems like you're doing is setting up your brand new city manager to have egg on his face. That you have a bad situation that's been here for decades, as Todd Jones says, for a very long time. This has not been financially viable. You had a private organization, a nonprofit, bail you out for a period of time, and then they changed their plans, and all of a sudden, you think that the economics changed from before they came and bailed you out. I don't think under the current business climate and what's going on in the city, this is the right time to have the Turtle Bay Riverfront have a boarded up group. When you guys were in charge, do you know how much you lost when you ran it? It was a lot more. And how many shows did you have during that time? A lot less. So if you think that government's better at running private events than our current operator, I'd wish you the luck. If you think that you're gonna have a vendor come in the short term and save you, I wish you luck. If you make the decision to close the Civic, I wish you luck. Worst case is, if you have this pie in the sky and you think someone's gonna save us, and in the meantime, you fire your current operator, all of the tickets that I've bought, I attend most shows here, unlike most of you in this room, that those tickets have to be returned. So when you publicly say that the current operator is shutting down, do you think that the booking agents are running to buy tickets in 12 months, in 6 months? So again, save money, cut jobs, find profitability. Don't embarrass yourselves right now.
All right, thanks, Jay. Here we go again. All right. Did we answer all your questions, or do we need some direction here?
I think there's somebody waiting. There's
I
somebody
think we
waiting.
would just
for a
need a
comment.
vote. Move for staff recommendation for the RFP items.
Was there another speaker? We just keep missing them, huh? Okay. I didn't see anybody else. We're going to continue forward, so, well, unless we, oh, he's
Yep.
coming, okay.
Is that Paul?
Come on up, he will speak. Come on up. You're holding a flag, that's why I'm letting you speak.
For
so
others in the
it's-
audience, we do have a kiosk in the back for the public comments, just for future. Just, it is a newer thing in the last few months, just FYI.
I mean, I apologize. I did use a kiosk, but it must have not have come through, so I apologize.
If you can state your name for the.
Yes.
board.
So good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Paul Salisbury, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I understand the importance of the Civic Auditorium to our community. It has historic value, cultural value, and economic value. It brings people together through concerts, events, local gatherings, and opportunities that can help support businesses and tourism here in Reading. So I want to be clear. I'm not against the Civic Auditorium, but I do believe that we have to be honest about where we are financially as a city. Right now, many families are struggling with rising costs, public safety, infrastructure, homelessness, behavioral health, and other essential city services that are all competing for limited resources. And at some point, we have to ask difficult questions about long-term sustainability. If the city continues investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into keeping the Civic Auditorium operational, then I believe there also needs to be a clear plan for accountability, measurable outcomes, and path forward towards financial stability rather than ongoing dependence on city funds. I believe in investing in our community, but I also believe in leadership requires making hard decisions responsibly. Sometimes leadership means saying, this has value, but we cannot continue funding something indefinitely without a sustainable plan. I would encourage continued exploration of partnerships, sponsorships, private investment, regional collaboration, or alternative operational models that could preserve the Civic Auditorium without placing additional long-term strain on taxpayers. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
And I'm back.
Welcome back.
So just to conclude, if we went through the RFP, and if you'd like to take a vote. And
I'll make a
Final
motion that we approve as directed to staff on the request for proposal as included in staff report and directed via council from the dais.
Can I just talk for a second?
Yes.
Yep.
You know, I've been up here 3.5 years, and this is probably the most taxing decision that I've made. No, my dad he used to manage Camp Surplus and had all kinds of sports, shows down there, and it was have great memories. The challenge is we just don't have the money, and a lot of people just don't believe that. But if anybody asks me, I'll deny this. But Tanessa might have been right on some of these things.
You heard it here.
And we honestly, and we are making some progress with what Mr. Tarbo and Mr. Webb are doing, and I don't want them to go down. I want them to stay. I want them to be here. And but sometimes you keep hearing people say we've kicked the can down the road. Well, I'm very sorry to say. Hopefully, we're going to stop that can from going down the road, and hopefully. I agree with the assessment of Travis, and all of us up here know it's going to be a challenge to find somebody. It just is. But I'm hopeful, and I'm hopeful that the people that are doing it now might be able, because I think in some senses, they're doing a great job. I talked to all the board members today, and all of them to a T said Julie Dyer is A+ at running the operations. So the big challenge is how do we make a profit? How do we make money? But as far as us donating or giving, I'm sorry, we just don't have the money. So I want to just give my explanation for why I'm voting the way I'm voting.
I wanted to start by saying how much I value the Civic. It's more than a building. It's where our community gathers, where kids first see a show, where we celebrate. We've grieved in that building. We've come together, and I deeply appreciate the work that Advanced Writing has done to keep the doors open and really working really hard to make the Civic sustainable. As we've heard, we're definitely managing a difficult fiscal reality. It's the staff report asked us to consider authorizing money for the funding while we're doing an RFP, but those aren't easy decisions. When cash is flowing really well and our reserves are strong, it makes these decisions really, really easy, but we're not in that place today. We do have structural problems that require long-term solutions. We still face a roughly $10 million gap every single year of money that we need for our roads. We have failing infrastructure around us, and we've got to find some sustainable funding for our riverfront and obviously our tourism goals. That I do believe a long-term responsibility path for a solution without having to punt this and bring it back every 3 or 4, 5 months for funding is to consider a long-term plan for 25% of our TOT tax to go to riverfront and tourism, which could help support venues like the Civic Center. But we can't really move with that kind of responsibility and action today until we complete the Circle 6 study, which is going to show us our general fund savings so we can have a clear plan to close those kind of gaps. Taking that TOT tax away obviously puts a strain on where that money is going to other areas of the budget. But committing that large ongoing sums now when we don't have a clear financial picture risks undermining our ability to preserve core services and protect the city assets at this time. And we cannot let pride or good intentions push us on to spending money right now to a path that could lead to insolvency later or worse. And I don't even want to be using the word bankruptcy. It doesn't mean the rest of us, we don't value the civic. It means that we just might be prudent and we deliberate, and this comes back in 6 to 18 months after the Circle 6 is done doing what they're doing. But tonight, I just think that the Civic Center is definitely priceless in our community, as we've talked about, but we owe a great fiscal responsibility to every resident in the city that requires us to avoid commitments we can't sustain yet. And my hope is this comes back in the future and we consider more of a long-term strategy, allocating the TOT tax as a long-term funding mechanism for the riverfront, for the civic, for tourism. Timing is a key word that comes to my mind, is this is just really, really tough timing until we figure everything else out. But I do believe there is a long-term strategy, and we just can't make that decision today. So that's where I'm at.
Mayor?
Vice Mayor Denuka, so. We do have a first.
Yeah, of course, everything everybody said is absolutely right. We want it, we just don't know how to pay for it. I think we should go ahead with the RFP process. Having said that, I still am hopeful that in next few weeks or something, which I have been big advocate of, raising the private funding to match city funding. And I do know that Advanced Reading has worked on that and have been able to secure few commitments of private donations. And I still am holding out hope that in next few weeks, Advanced Reading and other community members can work on it to raise even more private funds so that maybe a public-private partnership can still salvage this even in the short term. So I do want to encourage Advanced Reading team to keep working on that side.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. I have not heard a second, unless there's other comments here. You'll second, okay. All right, without any further deliberation, let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed, so that motion passes. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you, Travis.
And
Appreciate you.
thank you to Julie and her team for all your hard work on
Yeah,
this.
thank you.
Okay, moving on to the police. This is item 9.9C. We're going to consider the Reading Police Department Military Equipment Report.
All right. Same.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Captain Chris Smirnos from the Reading Police Department, and I'm here to give our AB 481 military equipment report as required by state law. For those in the audience, if you would like, that QR code will link you directly to our annual report if you want to scan that here in the next second or two. Otherwise, it's also available on our website, and we'll go through that here in a little bit. So the things I'm going to cover are what is AB 481, how it defines military equipment, the requirements, our inventory, and why this equipment is needed, to give an outline for my presentation tonight. So AB 481 was signed into law back in 2021 by Governor Newsom. It's designed to increase transparency, accountability, and oversight for the acquisition and use of specified types of equipment. I think it's important to note that even though the state law classifies or calls these things military equipment, a lot of the things, as you'll see, are not necessarily like military grade. We currently do not have any equipment in our inventory that was surplused from the military. It's just kind of the broad brushstroke that the state decided to paint that falls under AB 481 that we report on. The other thing that this law does is it creates a forum for public input and engagement, and also has several requirements that I will cover here in a minute. So there's several different categories of equipment that are part of AB 481. In this particular slide and the next one, the categories that are in blue are the ones that we actually have equipment in that category. So for example, in category 1, unmanned remotely piloted powered aerial or ground vehicles, we have UAVs or drones that we use, which is why you see that in blue. However, we do not have armored personnel carriers, category 2, or we do not have tracked tanks, which would be category 4, by example. And so the ones that are in blue are the ones that we have, and then, like I said, the ones that are not are ones that we don't. And then additional categories. A lot of this equipment is specialized for our SWAT team, but I'll cover some of these a little bit further as we go through. But just at a high level, these are the categories of gear that we currently possess and use at the Reading Police Department. And this presentation and approval by council is required for us to continue to use those. So these are the annual reporting requirements. So our department policy that covers military ordnance is, or military equipment is policy 707. That's published on our website. It was not modified in this last year, and so we did not, it's the same that we had last year, but we do make that available. We held a community meeting here at City Hall on May 6th that we published on our Facebook page and our social media channels. We had 2 citizens attend that. And so I was able to answer some questions and some discussion that came from that meeting. And then our city council meeting obviously is tonight. And so part of what you will be asked to approve is my presentation, the inventory report, and there's an uncodified ordinance that's also part of the package that we're required to present to council every year. So I'll go through a couple of our categories of equipment. This is the one that most people see and they think, oh, that looks like something from the military. This is called a Bearcat. It's made by Lenco. It is this particular version of it is specifically designed for civilian law enforcement use. It is armored. It does have the ability to stop certain levels of ammunition. We use this in a lot of different scenarios. Primarily, we respond if we have an incident where there's a significant threat of safety for officers or the public. It allows us to get very close to a dynamic situation, but still provides a high level of protection for our staff. This is maintained by our SWAT team, and it is, as you can see in the deployments, we had 12 patrol responses. Sometimes this comes out to public events for show, and then we had 2 SWAT operations where this was used in the past year. The state considers this military equipment, again, just by definition. This is our mobile command center. This was purchased several years ago through a partnership with REU and the Reading Fire Department. And so this allows us to be able to have a command center that we can take in place in the field. In the back of the command post, there are actually dispatch stations. So we can have dispatchers come in, plug in their laptops, and we have radios, and they can actually work out of it. I remember specifically with the Fawn Fire a few years ago, we took this up to Mountain Gate, and we were able to bring our SHASCOM dispatchers and have them actually dispatching right out of the back of the van, which is great because they're right there with all of the personnel that are working on this fire. And so we were able to have that really quick communication to get information out to the units in the field. We did deploy this for one emergency incident, which was our flooding this past year. We also use this for training and for big special events. For example, we just had this down at the rodeo. It gives us a base of operations. We're able to stream camera video. It has internet, Starlink, and other things built in so we can have communication capabilities. And again, this can be used not just for us, but for a big fire incident, for REU, or really any city incident. Again, because the state defines this as military equipment, it is being presented to you guys as part of the presentation tonight. This is probably one of the more useful programs that we have. It's our UAV program. As you can see, we had 86 total deployments, and it runs the gamut. Oftentimes we use them for investigations. They help document crime scenes. We use these for river rescues. We actually posted on social media a week or 2 ago where we used one of our UAVs to assist in a river rescue of somebody that was trapped under the Bonneview Bridge in the water. And so they are very useful and allow us to get views, especially from up above. Another use, and I'll talk about this in just a second specifically, is newer UAVs allow us to actually go into residences and get intelligence inside a residence or inside a structure without having to send in a person. And so if we have a hostage situation or we have somebody that is somehow barricaded in there, an armed subject, we're able to send a UAV in to get intelligence versus a person. And so they've been a great tool, and the technology has rapidly increased on these over the last several years. The inventory is in the full report, but this is probably our most used asset in the group that we have. One of the other requirements that we have is we're required to request approval of council if we are planning on purchasing any new equipment that falls in any of these categories. And so this is one of the new items that we would like to purchase. It's called the Skydio R10. It's only about 10 inches long or 10 inches across, and so it's pretty small. This one specifically is designed for indoor use, and it actually, it's really neat because it has two-way communication. So we could send this into a residence of a barricaded subject or a hostage situation, and we could actually communicate two ways with the person that's in there. With the battery capacity, we can take this into a, residence and actually have it land to keep an eye on something, and it can last for up to 3 hours. And so it has additional capabilities. It's able to backtrack out of the path that it took, but it allows us, again, to get intelligence on dynamic, tactical, or significant critical situations without having to send our actual people into that structure ahead of time. And so it allows us to make those decisions on how we're going to respond to what we need to do. Our current plan is to purchase one Skydio R10 package. The cost is about $10,000, and we plan on using existing grant funding for that. So I'm not requesting any budget items tonight for that. It's just in order for us to even consider purchasing this, we have to have approval from council. And so that's the Skydio R10. Other equipment that we have energetic explosive breaching. This is so we can get into residences quickly, and we carry a small inventory of things like det cord and some other devices that allow us to, again, breach doors if we need to get into a place quickly, again, for a dynamic hostage situation, barricaded subject, those sorts of things. We have breaching shotguns that are specially designed or use special rounds that allow us to breach doors. And then we have our 50 caliber rifle, which is specifically used by our sniper team on our SWAT team. Most of the gear that you see is maintained by our SWAT team. It's governed by our existing department policies, and our personnel have to be trained before they operate or deploy any of the things here. We carry rifles both on our SWAT team and our patrol shifts. All of our patrol officers are issued rifles. Our traffic unit has specially modified rifles for their motorcycles. We're required to report on our ammunition inventory, and we have diversionary devices, which are sometimes known as flashbangs. Again, it allows us to get into a residence and create a distraction so our staff is safe. And then we have kinetic energy launchers, which allow us to impact somebody at a distance in order to safely take them into custody. For example, if somebody was armed with a knife and they were threatening themselves or somebody else, it allows us from a distance to distract them and be able to take them into custody. Last year, we requested approval to purchase some additional 40 millimeter launcher systems for patrol. That request was granted, and so those systems are now in service for our patrol staff. And then we also have, lastly, some gas, and again, that's managed by our SWAT team, and those are used for, again, dynamic entry situations. Anything that you see here that says SWAT, these are not things that our patrol officers just carry in the trunk of their cars. They're highly regulated. Like I said, they're deployed and used by our SWAT team under very specific circumstances. So how does this impact us? With council approval, we'll continue to have access to these tools that keep our staff and our community safe. Without council approval, all of the things that are outlined in the report, we would not be able to use. And so we would have to come up with alternatives and would seek direction from council at this point. The reason a lot of people ask, well, why do you need military equipment? What's all this for? And as I explained, our goal is to peacefully resolve situations. We want to be able to use these tools, allow us to be safe, allow us to take people into custody with the minimal amount of injury or potential loss of life that we have. With that, we are required to publish this information on our website. And so if you go to AB or our policy and reference library, AB 481, it has links to our annual report. It has a mechanism for the community to report their concerns or any questions they have about military equipment. Again, this is something that we upload every annual report to the website. And with that, I will open it up to any questions from council.
I don't have any speakers for this. Last year, we had people that spoke out, so we must be doing good this year. So, Councilor Rezer?
I don't have any questions, but I will make a motion that we authorize and approve items 1, 2, 3, and 4.
I have a question.
I will second.
We have a first, second, but we have a question, so. Vice
Have
Mayor
you
Dugan.
received any public comments? opposing this?
No, so through our website submission forms, we have not received any negative feedback on it. At the community meeting that we held a week or two ago, we had, again, the community members had questions, but we were able to answer their questions, and there was nobody that was adamantly opposed to our use of the equipment as described. Again, I think it's important to note that even though it's called military equipment, it's just how the state defines it. These are all tools that are very standard and have been for many, many years in the law enforcement world.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a first, second, no other comments there. Let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposes? All right, that
I
passes.
oppose that mustache, but other than that, you're doing great.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
It's rodeo time.
Okay. All right, moving along, finance report. Consider the City of Reading General Fund Quarterly Financial Report ending March 2026. We probably should have had you go before civic conversations, but here we go.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Director of Finance, and City Treasurer Greg Robinette. I'm honored to be here this evening to discuss our third quarter financial update. First slide here goes over our cash reserves. And I know that word gets kind of used interchangeably. And in this case, the graph is actually depicting it somewhat interchangeably. So the actual on 6/30/2025 is actually what I would refer to as a budgetary cash, or our 10-year plan cash, which is adjusted for certain carryovers that will be expended but not included in our 10-year plan. And so it's an increase to our budget, it consumes cash, and therefore we actually lower our cash from the actual cash that was held on that date. Then the actuals that you see there are the actual recorded amounts that would tie to our cash report that goes to council on those dates. And then the projected cash is back to a budgetary basis of cash, using our 10-year plan to go from beginning to end based on revenue, less expenses, plus the beginning cash. And so currently, we're at 0.2% as of March 31st. We're projected, based on our 10-year plan, to reach 9.2%. I believe that projection is still pretty solid based on the information included in the report. I will point out that the largest reason for that increase over the next few months from the time of this report is property tax. We receive about $13 to $14 million of property tax in May and June. And so that's the reason that it will continue to build up through the remainder of the year. Is one of our largest revenues. The second kind of piece of it or tranche of it comes in the second half of the year. This next slide, I want to point out very specifically, it's on a cash flow basis. So it's not measuring relative to our entire budget. It is measuring relative to a cash flow forecast. And so in the case of expenses, for example, it's basically taking most of our expenses and it's dividing it by 12 and multiplying it by 9, or as was pointed out in a previous presentation, it's 75% of the total budget, and it's kind of comparing it to that 75% number. And so importantly, as we go through the next couple slides, I just want to point out that this is a measurement relative to the cash flow forecast, not a measurement to the entire budget. And city staff continues to monitor the budget relative to the total budget, not the cash flow estimates. But this is a useful indicator for council as we progress through the year, especially at this date and time. And so on the left, you'll see revenues are $7.2 million under projections. And the coming slides will talk about some of those specifics. And the expenses are about $4.9 million under projections. And again, there will be a slide that discusses specific departments coming up. So first, going through the revenue budget to actual details. These are based on the adjusted forecasts that were approved by council in February and ultimately approved through budget resolution in March. So these are the updated forecasts. So sales tax, the next slide will go over kind of the historical sales tax year over year. The sales tax at this point is exceeding our forecast through March, which again, I discussed on the expense side, how the forecasts are basically divided by 12, multiplied by 9. The sales tax and property tax forecasts actually align with when we expect to see those revenues. The property tax is always the example I use. We received most of the property tax revenue in January and May, with some small amounts in other portions of the year. And so this cash flow forecast actually takes that into account. And so relative to the cash flow forecast and the assumptions that were approved by council, Sales tax is slightly ahead of forecast, as is property tax, as is transient occupancy tax. But you can see a lot of that is in large dollar figures. As you move kind of to the right there, you'll see licenses and permits is slightly behind. Some of that is lack of activity in the licensing and permitting department, meaning there's less permits being pulled, is probably some of the contributor. I'd defer to Director of Development Services for the full details of what they're seeing from an activity basis. And then the next one there is fines and penalties. And I want to point out fines and penalties and charges for current services, because there's a relationship there that we're going to work on fixing in future reporting. The charges for current services typically includes things such as recreation programs, rentals of the sports park or the aquatic center, things of that nature. But there's actually a bad debt amount or an estimate for bad debt that actually relates to fines and penalties, because we know, and I know we've discussed this with council numerous times, we know that we do some fines and that aren't collectible. And so we make an estimate to determine the actual collectability on those. So in future reports, you'll see that better aligned. We're going to create a bad debt that actually aligns with where that revenue is. So you won't see this, I won't have to point this out in future updates. So moving forward to the transfers there and internal department revenue, that's the one that probably stands out off this entire page the most. And it's $7.8 million roughly under what was forecasted. This is largely a result of the streets budget. And I'm going to talk about the expense side, even though we're not there yet. Effectively, there's two primary factors that can impact the transfer from our gas tax funds, which are held in a special revenue fund, to the general fund. The streets department itself is mostly funded through gas tax. There was many years ago a kind of a minimum maintenance of effort required of the city, and that minimum maintenance of effort is the only part that's funded through general fund dollars. The rest of it is through a transfer from gas taxes. So in an extreme world where streets maybe spent $0, we would have zero expense and zero revenue transfer from the gas tax to the general fund. And so one primary thing that can cause some timing issues has to do with the rate at which the streets department is expending their dollars and whether we can actually transfer them to the general fund. In past years, we didn't used to actually quarterly make a true up at all. We are now making an estimated true up, but I will tell you it is meant to be conservative. We're doing 75% of the actual expenditures that are being incurred by the streets department kind of through the fiscal year. And then we will do the cleanup with kind of our year-end reporting and our what's called the streets report that goes to the state. And so then we will actually true up to the actual amount that we're allowed to transfer to cover eligible street expenses from the gas tax monies. And so a previous item this evening was the cash by fund report. Currently, the gas tax has about $16 to $17 million held within the gas tax that if we incurred eligible expenses, we could transfer to the general fund. And so a lot of this is just a timing difference based on when that gas tax is going to be moved and or when the expenditure will be incurred. Moving on to the next slide, I promised I would talk about historical tax revenues and give a little more color on what's going on with in our tax revenues. And I'm going to relate them to the decisions that council made in February because I think that's a useful data point. So sales tax is down 1.1% year over year. And if council remembers, when we updated the forecast in February, council decided to make a 2% reduction year over year from last fiscal year. So property tax is up 4.16% year over year. The forecast projects it to be a 3% increase year over year. TOT is up 3.84% year over year, and the forecast projects it to be a 3.5% year over year increase. And I won't go into cannabis and other taxes, but as I discussed on the previous slide, we are pretty much right in with the updated forecast, not the original forecast, the updated forecast that council approved. The next slide here is the expenditure side. I'm going to focus on probably two primary ones. As you can see, a lot of departments are, actually probably three primary ones. A lot of departments are in a position of having savings right now. This is kind of all the different divisions within those departments shown on one graph. relative to the cash flow forecast still, not to the total budget, just relative to the cash flow forecast. So first, I'm going to discuss Public Works because we were just talking about streets on the previous slide. Most of those savings will have to do with streets projects that Public Works might be in the process of getting out to bid and/or trying to deliver those projects. So there will be some timing that we can discuss, and Director Webb can provide some color on what's going on in their department if you wish. Then the next one I want to point out is in general government, we had two long-tenured employees retire from the city manager's office. And so there's pretty substantial one-time payouts that go with those retirements. In the general fund, we budget, basically, we estimate an amount for the entire general fund, and we put it in one place. At the end of the fiscal year, we go through and we see which departments have savings to where they can cover any cash outs that were incurred that year. In the case of the police department, they have savings where they are covering most of their cash outs that happened this year. So moving forward, likely they won't need any of that kind of pool of money that we budget in one location. And frankly, the city manager's office is probably going to need most, if not all of that. And so as we clean that up, council might have a few items that need to be cleaned up at year end when we do this report at year end and do our budget cleanup. Finally, I'm going to kind of skip to fire there. Fires showing that they're over budget. Two primary factors for this, both kind of in the discussion around overtime. One is when we actually recognize the revenue associated to out-of-county response. So in another area of the report, it shows that fire is already over their entire budget by about $300,000. If you were to take the 75% of that budget, it would show that they were over $850,000 in overtime. But they have $900,000 of revenue that we, at year end, will determine how much of that they need in order to make their budget whole. So I happen to be fire's liaison from the time I got here. I could tell you there were years when we needed very little of that for the fire department budget to be in balance in the personnel area. And then there's years when we needed all of it and more because maybe there was a lot of retirements or something that they couldn't absorb within their entire personnel budget. And so as we go through the rest of this fiscal year, we're going to continue to monitor and track where fire is relative to that, not just with overtime, but their entire budget. And then the second thing that I always kind of mention to council is when we do our expenditure budget and we do kind of the simple analysis of 75% to this point in the year, fire's overtime is very much more heavy in the summer months. And so in the first few months of the year, of our fiscal year, July, August, September, October, there's actually a higher burn rate of overtime. And so a lot of times we see that through the winter months and early spring months that start to normalize a little bit. And so we believe that's some of what is causing kind of this data point here that we will continue to monitor. And finally, not to leave it on a doom and gloom note, but I think this is an important thing for us to continue to keep in the front of our mind. The updated 10-year plan that was adopted in March showing that there's a lot of work to do. I will point out that the city manager and council approved an efficiency study, which is aiming to help rectify the problem, but also the city manager has implemented basically mission critical expenditures, including hiring and overtime. And so all of those measures we are hoping will continue to work to address this, and we'll continue to return to council at the appropriate time to report on any findings from the efficiency study and or any savings from the other cost savings measures that are being implemented. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Councilmember Audette.
Now you're shocked. Okay, I had a question about the UAL. Because in Q1, you had given us in that report, it was about $4.2 million total added to the UAL obligations. According to the chart, it went through from fiscal year ending 27 through fiscal year ending 32. And we didn't change it in the first 10 year. At the mid-year, we changed it. Do you want to jump in?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, we changed it. It looked like starting in 2028, but we skipped 2027. So was that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, so then I looked in this one to see if we had added it into 2027, and now I'm really screwed up. So did we add it into 27?
We have not added it. There's actually a variety of things that I plan to put before council with a resolution at the mid-cycle. One of those is, so there's two factors to the UAL. There's the fact that we're going to prepay it, which will save us money, right? And the fact that when we budgeted it, it was budgeted lower than what we ended up getting on the updated actuarial. So that's kind of, those two things, I looked at it briefly, are going to be close to washing each other out, but you are right, there is a slight need to increase it. The other thing that council probably hasn't been made aware of, potentially, is that our group insurance rates came in at 12% last year as an increase. And so
An increase of 12%?
yes, and when we budget, we made an assumption of 5% increases year over year. And so we're doing the budget in the spring of 2025.
Right.
And so then we're saying, hey, what do we think the rates are going to go up in January of 2026? And so we use a 5% assumption. So that's another item on the personnel side that'll actually have to require a cleanup that will hurt the general fund's position, and frankly, all funds will need that analysis done. Importantly, as part of the efficiency study and part of the cost-saving measures that the city manager has been doing, we're also holding positions open. And so if in this process there are some positions that can be identified as being permanently removed, that would also be part of that entire equation that would need to return to council. And so as we've embarked on this process, I'm trying to hold all of that so it can be one united analysis, but we certainly can return to council with any piece and part of that at any time.
So is the UAL obligation based on the actual employees we have or the employee positions we have on paper?
So the unfunded liability obligation is actually based on a flat dollar amount. Think of it as a debt payment. The UAL itself, while it is associated to some active employees, I'm not suggesting it's not, it is what I would call a expenditure of the plan. And so it, just as much as it exists, relates to active employees potentially, those closer to retirement probably have a bigger unfunded liability, if you will. We do not get any reporting from CalPERS that tells us how much unfunded liability by employee. And the other important factor, and probably the larger factor, is unfunded liability tends to actually relate to people that are retired, because all the assumptions that CalPERS makes regarding the unfunded liability, or the plan, manifest themselves in the form of unfunded liability. Sometimes they'll change assumptions, and that will cause the unfunded liability payments to go up in future years, or the assumptions they're making do not come to fruition. So I'll just use a simple one that a lot of people discuss, and that's the discount rate. And so the discount rate is currently set at 6.75%, I believe. I might be misquoted that slightly, but about 6.75%. If PERS makes 6.75% every year, you would never have unfunded liability.
Right.
If they made 10%, actually, we would be super funded.
Right.
But hold that thought, because if they make
Well, it's
less,
California, so I'm
but if they
holding
make-
it.
Yeah, if they make less than 6.75%, it actually requires us to have a payment
Make the
stream.
difference.
Over the years, CalPERS has changed their, I'd call it their minimum payment requirements. So when I first started here and when the discount rate change happened, CalPERS was using, I believe, a 30-year with a 5-year ramp up and a 5-year ramp down. And then basically for the middle 20 years, it would stay flat. CalPERS has changed that minimum assumption to be a 20-year straight line. So they basically say, okay, you now owe us X amount for whatever, I call them layers of unfunded liability. I know that's not a technical term, but they're basically a bunch of different debt payments that you have with CalPERS. And so this is a long-winded way of answering your question, that the unfunded liability, while we fund it in our budgets, and historically speaking, it looks like a percentage of pay, it's actually a debt payment that needs to be thought of as a debt payment. It's not necessarily variable based on the rate of pay, whereas the normal cost, the other portion, is variable based on the rate of pay. And so the normal cost will vary from PEPRA employees to classic employees. In the case of public safety, we actually have 2 tiers of classic employees and then PEPRA employees. But normal cost is highly variable based on actual rate of pay, Whereas unfunded liability, and I'll use the example where I mentioned we have vacant positions, and if the decision was made to remove those vacant positions from the budget and permanently eliminate them, we actually wouldn't have savings for unfunded liability. Because
That was my point.
Okay.
I don't think that you mentioned the vacant positions, and I'm like, why would we save it on vacant positions if you removed them? That's where,
yeah, I
that's
wasn't
what I was.
speaking directly to unfunded liability. I was speaking to the general fund budget as a whole.
No, I appreciate the lesson. It just didn't exist. But here is the point of what I was asking. But that's actually it's actually interesting. So I do appreciate it. But according to the Q1 report, we have about 4.2 million that needs to be added in cost to the budget. But in the actual 10-year report, it's only about 1.67 million that gets added into increased UAL payments. Is the, whatever that is, $2.8 million difference, is that because of a discount?
I would
That's
have
a
to-
big
I-
discount.
Yeah, I'd want to look at that specifically. So you're saying on the Q1 report, I'm going to look into it and get back to you.
So the Q1 report that you gave us, I have it here if you want to see it, but the Q1 report has a list of a total general fund, like the difference of what we're going to owe, and it's about 800,000 the first year, then 1 million, then 800, then 6, 4, and 4. It's a total of 4.2 million increase over those years.
Yes.
Is that like 6 years? When I go to the 10-year plan, we didn't include it in 27, so that 800,000 is not there. But then the following year, it's an additional from the first 10-year plan, $1.5 million increase, and then the next year's a $230,000 increase, then $244,000 increase, and then it goes down $350,000. So
Yeah, I want to take a look at it. I don't have those two pieces of data points, but I will absolutely take a look at it and get back to you as soon as.
I know we are looking for every dollar. And if our obligation is higher than what's in this 10-year, I don't know how we're going to get to the 9.9 by the end of the year. I'm just as hopeful as you are that we'll get there. But I also not sure that these are all the right numbers either. And maybe that's changed and maybe there's a discount. I don't know what that is, but as much, to me, we should be handling every quarterly report like it's a mid-year.
absolutely.
Just because things are changing so rapidly. Is it possible that we can sooner get an updated 10-year than waiting until September?
Yeah, for any item, I mean, if we have any items that are going to change, and I want to answer your question with an actual analysis, not just looking at the numbers
Totally.
and come
Yeah.
back to you. So I want to give you accurate information regarding that question. And I don't think I'll be able to do that even if I look at what you have. I probably need to open my computer and go through everything. So I absolutely want to give you accurate information on that. But on the side, to answer your question, council can request any frequency they want, right? My recommendation would be, probably looking at the city manager a little bit, is based on changes that we're actually going to make in the budget. If that information's wrong, I would absolutely be willing to send you guys a new one, just as an example, if it was wrong.
Yeah.
If it-
Specifically for this, just because it is a liability, it does affect our cash, especially our reserves, our unrestricted reserves. And so for planning purposes, for our making decision purposes, a lot of that stuff determines money we're, giving out. But if it's not really readily available to the public, then it's our word again, and so I'd like to just be consistent.
Yeah, if I find that that's wrong and I give you that explanation, we can return with a simple consent item with the updated 10-year plan for that item.
Yeah, or an explanation of why it's lower. Maybe something changed. Because with reserve, obviously our treasury report talked about cash flow and the liquidity issues that we have, and that's fine. We have it to do that, but we should have a good understanding of. I would say every month I'd like to know how reserves are doing, because I don't want to wait till September to find out whatever's coming. Okay. So I know if our proof of cash is coming out once a month, that would be a good indicator, and maybe.
It's a good indicator, but to your point, there is a slight difference between what I oftentimes call the budgetary basis or the actual, sometimes interchangeably use it with the reserve That's what I mean by the budgetary basis.
Yeah.
And the true cash that's sitting in the bank account, right? As I talked about carryovers and things of that nature. And so I hear what you're saying. I'll work with the city manager a little bit to discuss how to best get that information to council. But I do think that you're right. One item that is helpful is the monthly cash report that comes to council. But to your point, it also isn't the entire story of where the general fund
Yeah, I mean,
budgetary reserves are headed.
I mean, almost having like if we need to have an updated tenure because we have found some things that are changing and shifting, even if you included or even let us know, like, this is what it could be, even an email to us, just so that we're tracking along because, this is obviously fluid at this point. So something's got to be an indicator for us that how we're actually tracking, and I don't want to wait till September to find out how we ended in July. Anybody else
Yes.
interested in that?
Yes.
Two of us are interested in that.
No, it's of interest, so.
Okay.
Was that it?
Yeah, that's it.
One topic? No. Questions on overtime I've got. Chatted with you briefly on this, but I thought it'd be good to refresh myself. The overtime expenses were larger. I believe we offset some of the overtime from either vacancies or positions not filled. So therefore, that does cause us to accrue more overtime. So that balances out a little bit on that side. So the overtime, while it seems overinflated, we're making money in other areas.
It depends on the department. In the case of fire and police, certainly vacancies can cause more overtime to be expended, and there would be a vacant position that would help offset on the savings side. In the case of parks, as an example, typically their overtime is when they're doing some type of work for another department that was specifically requested by that department, and so they would charge that department for that overtime work that was done. And so those are kind of the two primary factors which you're not seeing when you're looking at the overtime item, but they show up in other areas of the budget as a positive, if you will.
Got it. Just my comment on overtime is we're trying to tighten the belt and watch every penny and find more money. Just my comment might be back to suggest requiring either weekly or monthly overtime reports, from the top 4 overtime departments that are hurting us, just so we can keep an eye on that. And maybe that would be some accounting and checks and balances on that, just to be able to keep better track and track that a little faster rather than, go to a quarterly report, however you guys are tracking that overtime. We already talked about the assumptions that are driving our 10-year forecast, how it's worsening, and by lowering our revenue assumptions, that is the driver of our 10-year budget that's worsening us. Is there any other assumptions that are contributing to the worsening of that forecast other than the revenue assumptions? Or
Well, as Councilmember Audette pointed out, the changes that happened in the CalPERS unfunded liability was a factor. And I'm very interested in what she just brought to my attention. So I'm like dying to go back to my desk and look at that, but that's just the nerd in me. But so that would be another factor. Any expenditure that goes up, so there were a few items that council approved even at the mid-year. They were small, but those would be included in here. Any budget resolution that council has approved here would be included in worsening the 10-year plan if there was not an associated revenue. And so anytime that there's an expenditure approved, that would worsen the 10-year plan. To the opposite of that, as we've been kind of discussing and alluding to, we are doing the citywide efficiency study. The results of that are still in progress, where we are tightening our belts, holding positions open, trying to limit overtime, limit expenditures. And so those are things that could be to the good, certainly. So not that was your question, but I just wanted to point that out, that as we continue to find and be able to quantify those things, those will return to council for their consideration as well.
Okay. I'm pleased to see our revenue is exceeding our expectations after we've changed our revenue assumptions. I know we're not out of the woods by any reason, by any chance, but
But we're up.
we are up, which is good, but we're not out of the woods, so.
Less than 1%, but still.
There's definitely still a notable year-to-date shortfall, in our 10-year plan warrants of stress as we're seeing. And, but the core tax receipts, just like we're seeing, they're largely holding, and our staff has really taken a lot of prudent steps by doing freezes, the efficiency study, which is really, really good. I think I'll just continue to ask as we'll make rapid, follow-ups to the council, so that way we can continue to make informed choices. So as information gets to us faster, and I appreciate how fast the information is getting to us, and as we work on getting out of the woods, right? So, Vice Mayor Denuka, see you.
So I had advocated for a conservative approach to budgeting in form of, how much the sales tax is going to rise. I advocated like 2% or less. But thanks to Teresa and also your effort on it, we have changed the baseline now. So it looks like that we're not doing as bad, which is good. But the elephant in the room is the inflation keeps on, this hyperinflation, actually, I'll call it, of the last several years and rapidly increasing even now, is going to eat into our revenue versus expenses for the foreseeable future. And there is no escape from that. Our services that we provide, city basic services like police, fire, roads, these services cost much more money than they were costing over the last few years. And obviously we should tighten our belt, we should be careful, but I really, really want to find out a way, how are we going to address this? How do we increase our revenue? And we have to figure out a way to increase our wealth. And there are only two ways. Either we increase our population, which will increase our tax basis, or we increase the public's income. And the times are going to be tough. Recession may be around the corner for all we know. So what we need to figure out as part of the study I've been asking is, how do we encourage more businesses here? How do we bring more businesses here? How do we do that part? And I have some ideas, but I think we all need to figure out that part of it, the revenue side. How do we increase the revenue? Because there is no way for us to escape this hyperinflation. It is not going to go back. The cost of living is not going to go back. Cost of providing service is not going to go back. So we have to really, I'm asking the public also, come up with the ideas. Tell us, how do we increase the revenue? How do we increase the wealth in our city? What's our next big economic engine? So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Good. Councilor Ardette, you're back.
I just wanted some clarity on the 10-year plan. When we talk about vacant positions, I'm assuming that's the line item in the 10-year that says savings, mostly because you told me that. So I just want to clarify. When we have vacant, go ahead.
The savings line is actually meant to be any type of savings of something that you would actually think there would be savings, O&M. So that has been in there for as long as I've been here, the 2% savings, but it's meant to encapsulate anything where savings could happen, not just personnel, but personnel certainly
Is
could be-
included in that.
The idea is, yeah, you would have savings across the board is the expectation baked into the 10-year plan.
So you build in there a 2% savings because of variable things, but personnel is one of them. So if there are empty positions, that's already sort of calculated or baked in into the savings line item that's in the expenditures section.
Certainly is part of it, yes.
And there's other O&Ms in addition to what you put into the budget, just in
Yeah.
general, because stuff happens.
In general, the expectation is departments don't fully exhaust their budget, right? And so it's basically assuming, hey, they're going to exhaust 98% of their budget.
So when you say savings per department, you don't mean the 2 million or 2% that's
I
in?
don't take into account the 2%.
Okay,
Because I'm
so
simply
that's-
reporting on budget, but that's a very good question.
So we're not double talking about savings? Or we are a little bit?
We are a little bit. So if you were to ask me relative to the 10-year plan, whether we have savings, not the budget, it requires a little more in-depth analysis to go in and say, okay, well, the 10-year plan assumes that we're going to save 2% in these areas of the budget. Did we accomplish that, yes or no, as the first step? And did we exceed it, would be the second step.
So that's sort of that pool of money that you're talking about when you're saying that sometimes you need some savings to put towards other departments that go over.
The pool of money I was talking about was specific to retirement cash outs. So we budget a set amount, which is.
I just meant the budget part, not the retirement part.
Yeah, well, that we put a budget amount.
You had been talking about fire and police and the general government because the general government is higher this time because we had two people out of the department
Yeah.
retire.
And they'll need to utilize most of that.
Is that out of that savings pool?
It's not out of the savings pool. It's actually out of a budget line item that's in non-departmental.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Yep.
Anybody?
Would that make you happy?
Do we need to make a
I'll
motion to accept the report?
To accept the
I will
quarterly report.
second.
All right. Without further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Good work. Where are we going now?
Well, you're going to travel reports, and none of us are traveling because we don't have a budget to travel.
Travel reports. No, nothing to report there? Okay. Nothing at all. Okay.
Paying.
Any items for line item 12s for the future? Anything to bring up at all?
I had one. Greg, when was the last time we did our investment committee? With I know DeQuisto was on it previously.
We've never had a council member on the investment advisory committee.
I have the last staff report from it. It was, I think it was
Was he,
October.
maybe he attended?
He's on the report.
It's been a couple years. It's something
it was
that's on my
23.
to-do list.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably been, because frankly, staff resources, we absolutely can have it. We just have to get a committee back together and start holding it. Frankly, it's been one of those things that slipped through the cracks in priorities.
Okay, I would like that to come back, especially just because of cash flow and that kind of stuff. I think it'd be important that we're doing that. So can you give us an idea of when that would be possible?
Probably in 2 to 3 months, we can
Okay.
we can get it back together. It's nothing that comes to council. That investment advisory committee is actually formed through the investment policy, and it outlines who can be on it and the composition of it.
Yeah, so I have the last staff report from it from October. I think it was 23, and DeQuisto was on it, and then it you gave a report to the council because I had just come on, so we got that report, giving a sort of like a report about it and sort of like a high level. Here's what we did. Here's all the information that came from that. So I did get that as a report.
I'll go try to find that and
Okay.
see what we provided you. And obviously, I don't have that,
All right.
but I'll take a look at it.
Okay, don't go anywhere, Craig.
And by law.
I discussed with Director Robinette today that I would love just an update when it's convenient for him to, and after he and the city manager review where we're at on opioid dollars, how much we've spent, and just an update to us on where we're at and that sort of thing. So I would love if that came back. I understand that it may take a little bit.
Do you want that to come back in a council meeting or or just a report by email to us?
No,
or-
I would like it presented in a council meeting because I think that it's dollars that we're likely going to need to figure out where we're spending.
I'm good with that. So,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Greg, don't go anywhere. Just kidding. No. All right. Before we adjourn, I'd like to remind everybody the flags, there's lots of extra ones. Take 1, 2, 3. Get your neighborhoods going. Let's bring our pride back to America, and let's make sure all those flags are taken. We're adjourned.